Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a good weekend. I hope you are all having a good start to the new Gwent season. We are now in the season of the Draconids. Where is the time going? Now, CDPR made a very important change in the 3.1 patch. It's one I've been looking forward to for a long time. I wish they'd introduced it sooner. This is splitting up control and point slam a little bit by taking some of the damage value off of units with a base score. It means that greedy decks get a little bit more time to shine, and there is room for some proper control decks. Should bring a lot more variety back into the game. And because of said variety, we get to do something fun and exciting, something I've never done before, a deck guide for a greedy deck. And is a deck guide for a deck that has a very familiar name. Those of you who played beta Gwent will know the name Greatswords very well. It was very popular, it was very good. This is not that deck, but it's good to be able to see the card back in action, even if it does something completely different now. This deck actually works more similar to Axemen from beta Gwent. It's that same kind of depends on dealing a lot of damage, gaining value over time. This particular deck list was put together by Molegion, and we've been playing it together on the ladder, testing it out, refining it a little bit, and this is its final form, at least for now. The general game plan with this deck is to aim for a long round 3, winning round 1 not so important, length of round 1, long round 1 is better, but you don't really mind so much. Getting to a long round 3 is what makes this deck work at its best. It does support other length of rounds as well, but to really see the impact, you want that long round 3. What is really important for round 1 is to get good value out of the bronze cards, and I don't mean in terms of points necessarily, but in terms of provision cost. Skellige 4 and 5 provision cost cards are very good. They're better than most other factions. You basically want to be able to get through round 1 using fewer provisions than your opponent. So if you can get round 1 just by using bronze cards, that's the perfect scenario. And the other important thing to note is that this is a greedy deck. Now, these days when people hear greedy, there can be a bit of a misunderstanding of what that means. Sometimes people understand that to mean you want to make sure you get good value. You want to make certain you get good value out of some of the cards, which isn't wrong, but you have to bring yourself back to this mindset of what exactly that means. Let's take one of the cards just as an example. Dagger in combination with Herald is 20 points, almost guaranteed if you have last say and you play it as your last card. That's good value, and a lot of people would think that playing Dagger in a greedy manner is waiting and waiting and waiting until you can guarantee that that value is going to actually stick. That's not what we want to do with this deck. With our cards that generate points on damage, we actually want to get greedy with the value of these cards. We want to play them for as many points as we possibly can, which means playing them as early as we possibly can. Both in round 1 and round 3, the earlier you bring them down, the more value they're likely to see during the round. So, of course, depending on which matchup you're playing, you want to be a little careful, but as soon as you see an opening for them to start generating value, you have to take it. We spoke briefly about Dagger, but I'll pick up there a little bit more. It is one of the key cards in this deck, not just because it can generate so much value in round 3, but also because in a short round, if you are forced into a short round, it is still a 20-point play with Herald the Cripple. It is our finisher, but it's not a classic homecoming finisher in that it's necessarily the last card played. Of course, we also have the namesake of the deck, the Anchorate Greatsword. Works very differently to how it did in beta. This card was popular for a little while during early homecoming, but died off pretty quickly when people realised that greedy decks stood absolutely no chance in any meta ever. Little did they know. These cards are super important, not just in round 3 but also in round 1. You'll notice we are playing Freya's Blessing, so we do get to replay them should we have to. That means, again, this is one of those scenarios where we can get out of round 1 using far fewer provisions than our opponent because our bronzes generate so much more value. If they are saved until round 3, it makes the control of your opponent far more difficult to use because they have to get around multiple Greatswords and Dagger and Resurrection, and it just demands answers out of your opponent. You do want to be a little bit careful with Ancrate Greatswords. Damage has been dialed down by quite a lot, but 4 points is still possible with some scenarios. So I'd recommend playing this when Rain is already on the board, when Ragnarok is already on the board. With this particular version, you can also play Summoning Circle, let Summoning Circle tick up to 5, play Greatsword, and then summon the Demon Warship for, I think, a grand total of 7 points in one turn, but that already puts the Greatsword at a sweet spot where it's far more difficult to deal with. And speaking of the rain that I just mentioned, let's talk about weather very quickly. It's nice to see weather back in the game. It's not likely to see a lot of tech against it. Both Ragnarok and Torrential Rain are very key cards to this deck, and it's important to use them properly. It's very tempting, particularly when you've lost round 1, it's very tempting to try and hold back on using weather effects because they're so low tempo. But the thing is, if you play them too late, they're not going to see as much value because the round is so short. So you have to use them in round 1, round 2, round 3. Again, use them as early as possible, but use them sensibly. For Torrential Rain, don't put it down until the opponent has 2 units on the row, otherwise you lose value. Like I said, this is a proper old school greedy engine deck. It's very, very good in the long round. It generates so much value. Another one of the pros, it has to be, I do have to say, we do still have access to Dagger 2 Blades and Herald the Cripple. So if you find yourself against an even greedier deck and you've won round 1, or you've lost round 1 and you're being bled, a short round 3 isn't necessarily a detriment because Dagger 2 Blades and Herald the Cripple are so powerful. Where the deck starts to struggle a little bit is that middle ground, the mid-length round where the greedy engines don't have enough time to get going and the point slam isn't quite enough on its own. Of course, being one of those engine decks with value ticking over time, control is a big issue. This is a deck that's weak to too much control at once. Tool removal can be problematic if there's more than one. Locks can be problematic. This deck's most difficult matchup is probably Emir, because Emir can play tool removal, the same tool removal more than once, so you have to keep in mind at all times what cards does my opponent have and which cards can I play to make sure that my key cards don't get completely trashed. The mulligans for this deck are fairly easy. In round 1 you can almost always get away with mulliganing away a Freya's Blessing, and after the Freya's Blessing our summoning circle target is usually Demon Warship, so you probably want to mulligan the Demon Warships away. After that things get a little bit more complicated because it depends what cards you have access to and what cards you don't have access to. Obviously you don't want to keep Heme Protectors if you don't have access to Svalblood Priests. You might want to consider getting rid of a Pella in round 1 if you don't think you're likely to come across many locks. And again in round 1, or later on round 2 or round 3, you can consider, if you have nothing better to do, you're worried about consistency, you want to cycle through your deck or dig for a card, you can get rid of the Dim and Light Longship as well. It's really situational. The important thing to note is the easy options at the beginning: Freya's Blessing, Dim and Warship. Tech choices are another interesting one because the deck doesn't contain too many flex slots. The first one is Summoning Circle. Didn't actually make the cut in the original version of the deck. If you're running into a lot of artifact removal, Summoning Circle can definitely be removed. It's in there to help us make sure our Greatsword stays alive, nothing else really. A little bit of consistency, I suppose. At a stretch, it can be replaced for Sigdrifer's Right. This is the card that was initially in the build. It's not fantastic, but what it allows us to do is be a little more flexible on when we play Dagger. It even allows us to play Dagger in round 1 if you have Sigdrifer's Right in hand, if you're confident you'll be able to replay him in round 3. Of course, this costs 1 provision more than Summoning Circle, which means you have to get rid of a 5-drop, turn it into a 4-drop. The switch we would make is Pella for Svalbard Butcher. And that is it in terms of describing the deck this time around. I'm trying to be a little more concise, trying to find a better format, so I hope this works. Let's jump into some gameplay and watch this truly beautiful deck in action. That's the sound of us losing the coin flip again. Who are we up against this time? Philavandrel. We have some decent cards this time at least. We like Priest, we can probably get rid of the Warship. In fact, we definitely want to get rid of the Warships, because they are our Summoning Circle targets. And then once you've played Summoning Circle, basically it's Rain when Summoning Circle is at 3. No, it isn't. It's Rain when Summoning Circle is at 4.
Humans lust after our lady folk.
What we can do on the meantime is play Priest onto the Longship, tactical advantage, to make sure the Longship doesn't die and it doesn't get hit by tool removal. Oh, it might just die now. Well then, let's play another one. And hope that they play a unit on the ranged row. Well, at least that is something for us to use tactical advantage on and play Priest into. Right, at the very least. Right, there we go. So now we can play Greatsword onto the ranged row and Warship. Do we care about resilience? I don't think we do. I don't think we care that much about a resilient unit in round 2. We can get rid of the Longship now. We pick up both Rains. It's entirely possible that we don't have room for 2 Rains and Ragnarok in hand at once. We could play one out now. Force them to play another unit. Is it going to be another resilient dwarf? That's the question. That we probably care about.
Special price. Just
No,
for
it
you,
isn't.
love.
Okay.
Overdone in a jiffy.
It was to be expected. I think we get rid of a protector and a longship here. The protector's not fantastic, though it at least has some synergy with the totem.
We've lived in isolation for too bloody long.
The only other card we probably would have wanted to get there was Avalanche. It's not the end of the world that we're missing Avalanche either.
Mahakam!
In order to make sure we don't fall too far behind, we could try to play Triss Telekinesis for rain. Just to make sure we have some points on the board.
Wanna put for my axe?
That's a lot of points.
On crate!
It's fine, we were kind of expecting that. We do have another one.
I once lopped off 3 heads with one blow.
Of course, when this rain stops ticking, we'll play another one.
Mother will be proud.
Oh, they're gonna keep locking the units. Now is probably the time to play Dagger. How many more locks can they have? They can still have Kieran. We should probably play around Kieran.
Show me the coin or sod off.
You shan't get through!
Well, we can't play around Kieran anymore. We have to go now.
Slaughter them to a man!
No. Really? We should still win with the ticks. It was close. Greedy decks are greedy, but we got there.
Up and at 'em, you lazy bastards! You'll sleep when you're dead.
Right, against who are we against? Foltest again. We have too many protectors and not enough procs for them. We can get rid of Freya's Blessing as well. Lothari. How many provisions does a Dimon warship have? Sorry, not a Dimon. Yeah, Dimon warship has. It has 5 provisions. Not 4, not 6, 5. Let's try to remember not to get that wrong this time. Oh, what are the odds? Never mind. I guess it was only a matter of time before we ran into someone running artifact removal. That is the tech. You can swap out Summoning Circle if you're just running into too much artifact removal. Put in maybe Sigdrifa's right and downgrade a 4 cost. Seems bad. You know what? I think we will take this because it looks like it's a unitless deck.
On guard! A duel! To a duel I challenge thee!
Basically, we're looking to get Rain off Triss Telekinesis into Ankre Greatsword. I think that's the play. They're not going to have any problem contesting a long round. This really is quite unitless, isn't it? Well, we'll play out another one, I suppose. They're the least valuable units in our hand. If it is unitless, we don't want to let them. We don't want to let them stop playing. Unfortunately, we might just have to take the hit on bad. you really don't want to do that though. Particularly when, if they're going to play units, they're forced to play into the rain this turn. Do we just waste Pella? Maybe it's Greatsword, actually, with a hit on the light longship. But then they're just going to play into the wrong row, aren't they? So I think we have to play Pella. Okay, that manages to take the round on 4, so we go into a long round 3 with Last Say again. Oh, where are you? I think we get rid of Avalak, honestly. We have to try to get to Dagger.
What has that witch done?
Vandergriffin to try pass round 2 is a very good plan. We do find Dagger, which is nice. We find the Protectors too, they can go. We get Avalak back, never punished. If they play onto the ranged row now, we just play Rain. Oh, you know what? They've given us two units on the melee row. We can Rain that as well. That's totally fine. We have another one. They cannot possibly keep giving units shields. Okay, we're gonna have to play a Greatsword into the Black Blood. This is a very weird deck. But it's okay, I think, because we can res it with Triss. They're going to stop running out of ways to kill us eventually. Okay. Now we start catching up on points. We don't manage to make Dagger. I think we're going to have to take the Dagger here. With the hero power. just to make sure that we don't fall behind too much. There's absolutely no way that they're getting Kedweni Revenant to go off now.
Gentlemen, mount up.
I'll do what I can.
I once lopped off 3 heads with 1 blow.
The reason we went for Greatsword there is because of the Delirium. Question is, which damage do we want to do first? Really, we probably want to clear some of these Revenants, which we can do with Lacerate. I think that makes more sense, honestly.
Now do this.
They're going to try and spawn as many points as possible and give us more points in the meanwhile. It's a nice idea, but I don't think it's working. So many points. That's the idea. It's that's the idea, and we can see against full test at least it works. And that is it for today, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this guide. Please feel free to leave your feedback below. I always enjoy reading your comments. Sometimes I respond if I feel like there's anything worth saying. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content, because that makes me more confident in creating more. Keep an eye out on everything I do and everything Team Aretuza does across the internet. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Instagram now, we're on Discord, we're everywhere. If there's Gwent, there is probably someone from Team Aretuza nearby. I hope you all have a nice weekend. I hope you all continue to enjoy what is going to be a very different feeling Gwent from here on out. I think if they continue down this development path, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the other factions now that we've seen what they've done to Northern Realms. I won't keep you any longer. I have been Lothari. You have been a pleasure to work with, as always. See you very soon.